Zane, what kind of place is this? I asked in a panicked voice, glancing nervously at the bar before turning back to him. He chuckled lightly and said, "Just come inside, you'll understand soon enough." But my anxiety was growing. I hesitated, asking him, "First, tell me why you brought me here. What am I supposed to do here?" Zane placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "You're fed up with your home life. It's impossible to make ends meet with your salary, your father's medicines, the household expenses. It's all too much. You've been looking for a shortcut to solve your problems, haven't you?" I nodded in agreement but couldn't stop my thoughts as I glanced back at the bar. How could a place like this solve all my problems? Zane was unpredictable and headstrong. Once he made up his mind, he saw it through, and seeing how his fortunes had turned recently only deepened my confusion. Just a few years ago, he was struggling in poverty like me. Now suddenly he was wealthy. If he promised to make me rich like him, I had no reason to doubt him. He was a man of his word. Zane dragged me inside the bar. The scene before me made me lower my eyes in shame. Women, mostly middle-aged or older, held glasses of alcohol, dancing provocatively and drinking without care. What shocked me more was that they were accompanied by boys half their age, spoiled rich kids, or so it seemed. Zane leaned in and whispered, "What do you think about these guys?" When I shared my thoughts, he laughed and said, "You're wrong. These boys are struggling just like you." His words shocked me. He continued, "Just watch quietly. You'll figure it all out. You'll learn this slowly." He left me there and walked over to a woman in her 50s or 60s. She wore revealing clothes, her heavily made-up face adding to her strange appearance. I couldn't bring myself to look at her directly, lowering my gaze in embarrassment. When Zane gestured towards me, the woman looked at me with an unsettling interest. A wave of discomfort swept over me. Was I expected to dance with this older woman, like the other boys? The thought terrified me. Zane, ignoring my refusal, grabbed my hand and led me into a private room. Despite my protests, he left me alone there with the woman. She slowly approached me, her hand brushing against my face as she said, "You are very handsome." "You young men are my weakness," she said, her gaze fixed on me. "But I've never seen anyone as handsome as you." She stood very close to me, and the alluring fragrance she wore filled the air, clouding my senses in a strange way. I was panicking, wondering why Zane had left me alone with her. Sensing my discomfort, she smiled mischievously and said, "Looks like it's your first time. Are you meeting a woman alone for the first time?" I nodded hesitantly. "Don't worry," she said. "I'll teach you everything." Her words unsettled me, but what she demanded next shook me to my core. I couldn't believe a woman could ask for such a thing. Seeing my open-mouthed shock, she added, "I'm not asking you to do this for free. I'll pay you handsomely, far more than I pay Zane." She then forced me into a situation I could neither comprehend nor escape. At first, I resisted, trying to stop her and explain what was right and wrong. But she ignored me, swept away by her emotions. And eventually, I found myself unable to hold back my own. 2 hours later, Zane returned to the room. He smirked at me with a teasing look. Embarrassed, I avoided his gaze. As I was about to leave the room, the woman placed a thick wad of cash in my hand. "Come to my house every day," she said. "I'll wait for you, and I'll pay you just as much daily. Whatever you ask for, you'll get." She left, and I stood there, staring at the money in disbelief. How could so much money end up in my hands after just 2 hours? But then it hit me. I had earned it through something I considered sinful. The thought made me feel disgusted with myself. Here I was, a young and able-bodied man, yet instead of working hard and earning honestly, I had chosen a shameful shortcut. But my family's needs weighed heavily on me. Rent, skyrocketing electricity bills, my father's medicines, and my siblings' school fees. I simply didn't have enough money to meet these demands. This money had solved all those problems. My mother was surprised to see me bring home so much cash. Her curiosity and concern grew, but I had no choice but to lie. I told her I'd started a well-paying part-time job. Soon I began enjoying this new arrangement. The woman's company didn't feel so bad anymore, and it wasn't even difficult. All I had to do was silence my conscience for a while and forget that she was my mother's age. As the money piled up, I deposited it into my account and began improving our lives. Sold my bike and bought a small car. I renovated our house, and for the first time, we were financially stable. My parents were relieved yet suspicious of my sudden fortune. I reassured them, saying my part-time job was the answer to all our problems. But deep down, I knew I was sinking further into a life I never imagined for myself. One day, my mother asked me, "You're not doing something wrong, are you?" Her question startled me, and I avoided her gaze. "Why would you think that, Mom?" I replied nervously. "Do I really seem like someone who would do such a thing?" She sighed and said, "These days, the world is so unpredictable that everything makes me worry. Suddenly, you have so much money, and I can't help but wonder if it's all earned the right way. You know, your father always fed us with honest earnings. Please don't do anything that would bring shame upon us." I managed to reassure her, offering vague explanations, but her words haunted me. I began questioning myself. Was I really doing something wrong? Was I earning money dishonestly? These thoughts left me unable to face myself. Zane was my college friend, and his family circumstances were no different from ours. Back in those days, I studied in college during the day and worked at a store in the evenings. Zane had a similar routine, but he always seemed dissatisfied with his life. In contrast, I was among those who thanked God for everything, no matter the situation. At the time, my father was also working, and our family lived a reasonably stable life. The cost of living was manageable, and electricity bills didn't overwhelm us like they do today. Even low-income families could make ends meet. But after college, I lost touch with Zane. Time went on, and life changed. After finishing my studies, I got a decent job at a company. My salary was good enough, and combined with my father's income, our household ran smoothly. Then suddenly, disaster struck. My father suffered a stroke, and all the savings we had been putting aside to buy a small plot of land were used up for his treatment. My mother, too, was dealing with diabetes and high blood pressure, requiring regular doctor visits and medications. My salary wasn't enough to cover these growing expenses. Meanwhile, inflation kept rising, making survival feel like an uphill battle. One day, overwhelmed by these challenges, I sat on the sidewalk, my head in my hands, trying to figure out how to deal with it all. That's when I ran into Zane. I was shocked to see him. It was as if he had completely escaped the poverty-stricken life he once had. Zane promised to share his secret with me, and soon he revealed the shortcut he had taken. It was something I couldn't accept, but I had no other options left. Zane had entanglements with many women, from whom he received large sums of money. I, however, had never even spoken to a woman outside my family before. My needs and desires were modest, and they were completely fulfilled by Samina. Samina was the widow of a wealthy businessman who had passed away a few years earlier. She had inherited all his wealth and property and was now spending it lavishly. I had no need to look elsewhere because Samina was meeting all my needs, financial and otherwise, with ease. God had not blessed Samina with children, which left a void in her life. She tried to fill that emptiness by spending money on friendships and indulgences. Over time, Samina started insisting that I marry her. She told me she loved me and couldn't imagine life without me. Her proposal left me anxious. There was no way I could marry a woman twice my age. My mother had dreams for my future and wanted me to marry someone of her choice. Moreover, Samina's past relationships with numerous men made it impossible for me to see her as a suitable wife. At the same time, my parents began discussing my marriage. But Samina's persistence grew stronger. She promised that if I married her, she would transfer all her wealth and property to me. Her offer tempted me. I began to rationalize, thinking, how many years does she even have left? I'll spend a few years with her, and once she's gone, I can marry someone else of my choice. Meanwhile, all her wealth will be mine, and I can live a life of luxury. When I shared this plan with my parents, my mother stared at me in shock, unable to believe her ears. My father was equally stunned. My mother scolded me harshly, saying, "Shame on you. You should be embarrassed that even to think of such a thing. How could you marry a woman old enough to be your mother?" Despite their protests, I stood firm. My mother tried emotional blackmail, even threatening not to bless me, but I ignored her. I told them, "I want to live life on my own terms. You should be happy for me. I'm getting wealth and property. without lifting a finger, something I could never achieve even with a lifetime of hard work. My mother, disgusted, retorted, "Curse this kind of wealth. If it costs you your dignity, it's not worth having. I'm sure all this money you've been flaunting is because of that woman." Her words hit close to home, but I was too blinded by my dreams of a golden future to care. Ignoring their objections, I married Samina. She lived in a massive bungalow, so I moved in with her. Occasionally, I visited my parents, but they refused to speak to me and turned away whenever they saw me. On the first night after our marriage, I gave my wife a beautiful ring as a gift. She smiled and handed me a small packet, saying, "Use this." "I want us to make tonight unforgettable," my wife said, her tone playful yet serious. Her words made me laugh out loud. I knew exactly what she meant. I decided to make the night as memorable for her as possible, something she would never forget. Opening the packet she had given me, I took the pills inside with a glass of milk. Soon, it became a routine. Every few days, my wife would insist I take those pills. But over time, I started feeling weaker, as if my body was aging prematurely. I felt physically drained, but I couldn't let her see that. I knew she had a vibrant and demanding nature, and if I couldn't meet her expectations, she might lose interest in me, or worse, throw me out. And I couldn't let go of the wealth and comforts I was now enjoying. As the days passed, my physical weakness only grew worse. I began avoiding her, making excuses to keep my distance. Sometimes I'd stay overnight at my parents' house, telling her my father wasn't feeling well. Other times I'd pretend to be exhausted from work and act like I had no energy left. Her frustration was evident, but I didn't know what else to do. I could sense that she was gradually pulling away from me, but I felt trapped in a situation I couldn't fix. At a friend's suggestion, I started visiting a traditional herbalist for treatment, hoping to regain my strength. However, instead of helping, the herbal remedies only made things worse. Eventually, I realized I could no longer fulfill my marital duties, but I was too ashamed and afraid to tell my wife. One day, I broke down in tears during a visit to the doctor, explaining my situation. He listened carefully and then asked, "Have you taken any medication prior to this condition?" That's when I remembered the packet my wife had given me on our wedding night, though I had forgotten the name of the medication. The doctor told me to bring it to him so he could determine what was causing my problems. The next day, I brought the packet to him. When he saw it, his eyes widened in shock. "This is a heavy-dose medication," he said. "You should never have taken this." "Where did you get it? This drug is banned here." I explained that my wife had given it to me. The doctor shook his head, clearly distressed. "Your wife may not have realized this, but by giving you this medication repeatedly to satisfy her temporary desires, she has permanently harmed your body. And by seeking treatment from various unqualified herbalists, you've only made your condition worse." He continued, "You'll need consistent medical treatment to recover. With time and effort, you may regain your ability to perform your marital duties, but it won't be an easy journey." The doctor's words had left me deeply disheartened. That night, when I returned home, I once again pretended to be too tired and went to bed early. But my wife was furious. She created a scene yelling, "I didn't bring you into this house so you could sleep and relax. Nor did I marry you so you could enjoy my wealth. I brought you here for a reason, and I expect you to fulfill it." Her words filled me with anxiety. Folding my hands in desperation, I pleaded, "I can't do this anymore. It's because of you that I'm in this condition. I'm no longer capable of fulfilling your expectations." I tried to explain, "The doctor has given me hope. With proper treatment and nutrition, I can recover and become my old self again. Please be patient until then." But she refused to listen. Her anger was blinding. "If I had known you were useless and incapable, I would never have married you," she snapped. Her cruel words enraged me. She had married me after witnessing my strength, and it was her actions that had caused my downfall. Yet, instead of admitting her mistake, she blamed me. To make matters worse, she began bringing other men into the house. She would shamelessly take them into our bedroom, spending hours alone with them. When I tried to confront her about it, she lashed out saying, "What else am I supposed to do? You're not capable of anything. Divorce me so I can marry someone who can actually fulfill my needs and make me happy." Her actions and words became unbearable. One day I finally had enough. I divorced her and returned to my parents' house. That day I wept uncontrollably in my mother's lap, confessing my mistakes. Greed destroyed me, I said. I shouldn't have done this. In the pursuit of wealth, I abandoned my stable job and ruined my life. Despite the pain, there was one small consolation. The money I had saved in my account, thanks to Samina, allowed me to start a small business. Over time, the business grew, and I was financially stable again. However, no amount of money could undo the damage done to my health. I sought treatment from the best doctors, but I never fully recovered. Eventually, I gave up hope. My strength and energy were gone, and so were my desires and ambitions. I had resigned myself to my fate. I had wronged myself in ways that were almost impossible to fix. In my greed for money, I lost everything that truly mattered. Now, all I'm left with is regret. I curse the day I went to that bar with Zane. If only I had never gone there, none of this would have happened. Even if I had stayed poor, struggling, and facing life's challenges, at least I wouldn't have suffered such a monumental loss. Money comes and goes, but the damage I inflicted on myself is permanent. There was a time when I had nothing, yet I had hope. Today I have everything, but I feel empty. I have no wife, no children, and no one to share my life with. I know I will spend the rest of my days alone. My mother, during her lifetime, often expressed her wish for me to remarry, but I would lower my head in shame, unable to tell her the truth. I was no longer capable of being a husband to anyone. I had helped my younger siblings get educated, settled, and married. They were happy and content in their own lives. My parents, however, left this world carrying the unfulfilled dream of seeing me married again. Now I live alone in this big house. I had always craved wealth, and I achieved it. But now, despite all the money, my hands feel empty. I long for the joys of a family, a loving wife, children to care for. But none of that is within my reach. I have no one to spend this money on. All that remains in my heart is regret. My greed destroyed everything. If only I had listened to my mother and refused to marry that woman, my life would have been so different today. To all young men, I urge you, never take shortcuts for money. Don't make the kind of mistakes I did. Work hard and earn an honest living through your own efforts. A man's strength lies in believing in himself and his abilities, not in shortcuts that bring nothing but loss and regret.